I'm Nic Harcourt, and Danny Elfman is going to be at the Hollywood Bowl on Saturday. That's tomorrow, and at the Shoreline Amphitheatre on Sunday with his From Boingo to Batman to Big Mess and Beyond show. We're going to talk about that in a little while, but first up, welcome, Danny. A pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure is mine.
You know, I was reading this morning before we started talking a little bit about your background before the music, and I read that you traveled around the world as a young man, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that and how that impacted how you thought about music.
You know, it was, I was only 18 years old, fresh out of high school, and I charted a trip around the world with my buddy. We were going to take a year. I had a lot of wanderlust at that age, but things changed. And so I went to visit my brother in Paris, who was playing with the French musical theatrical troupe, and they actually hired me to play violin. And I'd only been playing for 5 months because I took a violin with me. And suddenly the idea of performing, I'd never thought of it until that moment. And then I made new friends, and I ended up, instead of going to North Africa and up to Asia, I went to North Africa and down through West Africa. And that trip took the better part of the year. I traveled down the West Coast over to Central Africa and crossed over to East Africa. If you look at a map, you can go, oh, I could do that in 30 months. When you're traveling in the back of trucks, like I was, it took a lot longer, but it was an amazing trip. And I had this instrument and I was jamming with musicians all the time. They were really open and eager. Anytime there was musicians playing, they'd see my violin, they'd say, come on, join in. And it was really incredible because it was a new version of the world. Growing up a middle-class white kid in the 60s in America, I knew, it wasn't like a TV show, but it almost was like, that kind of TV show, middle-class family. And then suddenly being there, it really was life-altering. It changed me in a great way. I met wonderful people. I learned different instruments. I got interested in percussion. I brought back a lot of West African percussion and used them for years afterwards on stage and all. So it was one of those things that it just kind of changes your life in ways that you can't even tell, but you know that it does.
I feel like there should be some sort of system set up for everybody that when you graduate high school, you have to go travel overseas for a year or so. It would make a big difference.
I think it would be so amazing if that were the case. It's like, see what the world is like outside of the bubble you grew up in.
Bringing back all these instruments and then obviously working through being in a band, Oingo Boingo.
Well, first I was a musical theatrical troupe for 7 years with all these instruments, and we built our own instruments. I was building percussion instruments like crazy. And suddenly I heard ska music out of England and decided, I'm going to let all that go and start a ska band. And I started Oingo Boingo. Suddenly I was in a whole new different direction. And then that lasted from like 1979 till 95.
Was film something you always knew you wanted to work in? Was that a medium that you wanted to work in?
Well, yes and no, because on the one hand, as a teenager, I was really a film buff. We had these great repertory houses where it would play 2 different movies every night of the week. And so I would see Roman Polanski and Kurosawa and Truffaut and, old movies and new movies. I loved film. The only 2 things I couldn't imagine myself working in was composing or acting, because I knew I would be a crappy actor and I knew nothing about film composition. So, and actually at one point to try to become an editor or a cinematographer or something like that, things didn't work out the way I.
No, it turns out you actually were pretty good at composing. So tell us about getting into that, and obviously meeting Tim Burton and starting off with Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
It was so random. I got a call about this movie, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and I knew who Pee-wee was because I actually used to Paul Rubens do the Pee-wee character in a improv group in Los Angeles.
Right.
Earlier. It was called The Groundlings. And I already was a fan of his. So I was like, oh, a Pee-wee movie. I don't know who this Tim Burton kid is, but I actually thought they wanted a song with Oingo Boingo. Because usually at that point, if I met somebody about music in a film, it was for a song. And Tim was like, actually, I'm interested in you doing the score. And I'm like, me? And it was kind of like, it was so random. And so I saw part of the film, and it turned out that Paul Rubens had seen this cult film that I'd done 5 years earlier called Forbidden Zone, and he was a fan. So Tim knew me through Oingo Boingo, and Cole knew me through the Forbidden Zone. And my name came up somehow, and I just decided, well, what have I got to lose? And I ran home and made a little demo on a 4-track tape player and sent him a cassette tape. And a week later, I got a call saying, you got the job. And I'm like, what?
Was there a little bit of anxiety when you got that course? Like, oh my gosh, now I have to do it?
No, I have to figure out how to do it. Yeah, exactly. So getting it was one thing, but doing, oh my God.
An incredibly fruitful professional relationship, obviously, with Tim through the years. And most recently with Beetlejuice. What was it like revisiting those characters and scoring that film after the first one, I think was 1988?
Yeah, I mean, it was so much fun. You do these movies where you love doing the score, and it makes you almost sad that you'll never be able to do that music again, with the exception of Batman, where I was able to do 2 of them. And so I loved doing Beetlejuice. So the idea that many years later, I get to do it again, it was just like, like a gift. It was like playtime. It was being like let into the playpen again that you thought you'd left many years ago. And the playpen was just as fun second time around.
Your list of credits would take up the rest of this interview, but you mentioned Batman. We could throw out Nightmare Before Christmas, obviously, Edward Scissorhands, Alice in Wonderland, and a whole bunch of other films for other directors as well. But let's talk about this show, because my understanding is that this show is kind of like, if not the show that you did out at Coachella a couple of years ago.
Well, it's doubled that. It was the concept that I put together for Coachella, because I went to Coachella in 2019. I saw it and was like, wow. And I just had this crazy idea that what if I kind of mixed everything up, my old music, my new music, and film music, and put it in a blender. And Cole, the one in charge, said, yeah, sure, let's do it. And then, of course, now it was time to put the show together. I said, this is crazy. This isn't going to work at all. And then COVID happens. Coachella's canceled. So I said, well, I don't have to worry about that now. And then 2 years later, oh my God, I thought I was insane. Like, it was a crazy idea that, why did I pitch this show?
Mm-hmm.
Really, up until the time we walked out on stage, I was like, I just created the biggest train wreck of my life. And it wasn't until after the show, walking off, everybody was saying positive things. And I realized that it actually worked in some weird way. And so after Coachella, we took that and expanded it, because Coachella is only an hour long. And that's the show that we're doing at Hollywood Bowl and Shoreline Amphitheatre. It's that show.
How do you select from your vast repertoire of film scores and rock songs, a group of music, a group of songs, a group of pieces? How do you select the music for a show like this? And then how do you seamlessly stitch it together?
With choosing it was really hard. Obviously, everybody should know we do have a full orchestra on stage with us. It's like really is an insane show, but I kind of just chose pieces that, well, if I'm only going to have like 7 or 8 or, 8 film pieces, which would, and kind of played with a bunch of them and narrowed it down. So, there are suites from Batman and Beetlejuice and Pee-wee, as you were mentioning, Edward Scissorhands, and a little bit from Nightmare Before Christmas and Mars Attacks. And then I went through the old Boingo songs, and really it was just a matter of which ones can I still do and still have fun with, because, part of me doesn't ever like going back in time. But after all this time, I said, well, let me try rehearsing some of them and find some that I can still enjoy. And I found those songs that I still, oh yeah, this is fun. I'm enjoying this. And then I just kind of put it all together in a crazy way that, like I said, made no sense at all. And
hoping for the best.
Yeah, well, I mean, evidently, for whatever reason, people are really enjoying it, because this is now our second time back at the Hollywood Bowl, and we took it to a bunch of other places last year and played New World and shorter versions, more similar to Coachella. This last year, also in Las Vegas with System of a Down, and it's been really fun, and it's a great band.
Yeah, you mentioned, obviously you've got an orchestra on stage as well, and the choir as well that you had out at Coachella.
The choir, the orchestra, and a killer band that I just love playing with.
It's got to be so much fun as somebody who was in a band, but perhaps didn't get to tour for a long time, to now actually take that body of work on the road. It's almost like you're a touring musician again.
Oh my God, it's so surreal. I can't even tell you. I never expected to do this again in my life. And in a weird way, I mean, I don't want to say, because obviously it was a horrible thing, but it's because of COVID. Because I went into isolation like we all did for a year and a half, and all my concerts canceled, as everything did at that time, because I had a whole year, 2018 of concerts. And so I started writing. And at the end of all that, I had new music, and I was anxious to kind of like try it out. So then the idea of like doing this new old thing, came about, but I never expected to be on stage with a guitar in my hand again. Are you kidding? That
Right.
was like, yeah. That's what I did ages ago. So yeah, it's kind of like my life has been insane from every angle, from top to bottom, and full of stuff that's been unexpected. I mean, virtually everything that I've done in my life was not what I intended to do. And so the fact that I'm doing this is kind of like, well, okay, here we are again.
Well, that's
And
the
so,
beauty of the journey, isn't it?
yeah.
If you're open to it, unexpected things come up along the way, sliding doors, and all of a sudden you're somewhere you never would have imagined.
Exactly right. And the weirdest moment for me ever was that I'm also doing classical music. I'm on my 12th classical work. And back in, was it 21 Coachella or 22? I can't remember. But I had an opening in Vienna of a cello concerto. And I actually flew from being on a concert stage in Vienna with a full orchestra and a cello concerto back home and on stage a week later on Coachella. Going from Vienna concert to Coachella rock show the same week, I go, all right, it doesn't get more insane than this. And I'm happy for that.
Well, we're so happy that you're going to be doing this show this weekend, which not uncoincidentally, I'm sure, is Halloween/, Day of the Dead weekend as well.
Yes, absolutely. I wouldn't have it any other way. Still my holiday performing choice of the year after all this time. I can never escape Halloween.
It's great talking with you, man. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Good talking with you. Thank you.
Danny Elfman will bring From Boingo to Batman to Big Mess and Beyond to the Bowl tomorrow. That's Saturday the 2nd. And then on Sunday at the Shoreline Amphitheatre in Mountain View. Again, thank you so much. Good to meet you, man.
Pleasure.